Excellent, and welcome to the TADSummit Innovators podcast. I'm really excited to welcome Stephen to the podcast. I'll let him introduce himself in a little minute. Let me just say, he's a developer. He's an author. He has a book out, 20 Goto 10. Go to Amazon and buy it. He's a magician. He's an AI musician, a keynote speaker, and a FOSDEM regular, because I think you've got FOSDEM coming up soon. Do you, Stephen?
I do, depending on when people watch this. FOSDEM is either end of next week or a few weeks ago. I'm speaking there again.
That's true. We got that time thing. But anyway, Stephen, welcome. Please just give a quick intro to all the amazing stuff you've been getting up to over the years.
Thanks, Alan. Well, yeah, you said most of it. I'm a developer, and that's been the core of my career, for what I jokingly call a career anyway. It's just a series of jobs strung together with a paycheck attached.
Yep.
But as a developer, I've done the junior developer, mid-level developer, CTO developer, CTO non-developer thing. But it's always been about technology. It's always been, there's a computer somewhere, and I and my team, my team and I will work together to make that computer do something it didn't do last week. And the technology is always changing. So I've had to change with the technology. Sometimes I grow up with it. Sometimes I leave one area of tech and have a look at another one. And sort of going back to the polymath idea, because I've done some game technology over here and I've done some telecoms work over here, every now and again, someone says, oh, you do games and you do this telecom thing. We've got this education business we're trying to build that wants to get kids doing games while they can talk while they're playing the games. And it's like, oh, well, I do both of them. Let's see how both of these technologies work as a product.
Exactly.
And because I do lots of all these technology things, I suddenly see connections in things that maybe weren't there before, or if they were there before, just hadn't really been explored in the way that I was going to go ahead and explore them.
Exactly. That reminds me, because that was Third Space Learning. You were working with them for a time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did Third Space Learning thing. That was actually my second education technology platform.
Gotcha.
But it was Third Space, where the whole problem domain was we do not have enough tutors in the UK to teach the kids that need it.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say there aren't enough tutors. There are, but they all need tutors at 3:30, 4 o'clock on a weekday when everyone else wants a tutor.
Yes.
Which means all the rich kids come out of school, their parents have bought them a tutor. So if the poor families want a tutor, you're not going to get one. They've all been snapped up.
Yeah.
The only way around it is to get them quite literally on a bus at 2 in the afternoon to travel halfway across the country, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
With the telecoms thing, we said, well, the tutors can be anywhere.
Yeah.
So let's build a platform where we can provide this tutoring, we can provide it online, so we don't have the problem of, well, we have all this demand of people, mostly in the inner city schools, who need this extra tutoring.
Yeah.
They can't access it because everyone in the local area is taken. So let's find someone outside that local area and essentially telecommute them in.
Exactly.
And ultimately, we went the whole 9 yards, and we said, well, there are places in India who are trained in English as a language, trained in maths as a subject, and we had English-speaking maths tutors from here go over there to teach them the curriculum that we have over here.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
At which point, we've got a time difference.
Yeah.
And we can use that to our advantage.
Gotcha.
So the kids, instead of all having to do their tutoring after school, can do it in school, because for them, that's part of their normal daily routine. They can live their normal life, do their normal things. They can collect their kids from their school, and it's not going to interrupt them tutoring someone at our schools.
Excellent. Because it was one of those where, when we were in the midst of the pandemic and we were all doing remote learning, I was like, damn, that Third Space Learning was really massively ahead of its time.
It was really quite fun. It was one of the big disappointments is that we never got to white good the actual back end system.
Yeah.
It was always part of the plan.
Yeah.
But we just never got to do that. Otherwise, we quite literally invented Zoom 5 years too early.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could have been Zoom, I suppose. Yeah, he says with his arrogant hat on.
And of
the
course,
technology's the same at the end of the day.
that's right. And I was thinking, it was back in, was it 2015? You were first involved with TADHack down in Lisbon. I think your first
Yes,
hack there was
2015 was my first TADHack.
Yeah, yeah. Because one of the things that I always do for all the sponsors is, I tell them, listen to Stephen. Just he's going to give you advice. That's what he does. Listen to it. I remember it was like with the Troppo guys in the early days. I think it was back in Berlin, 2016, where you're doing a hack and you were also having some problems with debugging. And it was like, guys, you need a debugging tool. And then 2019, we had Simward, and they'd not built up one of the Node.js libraries. And what did you do while you were hacking?
Well, it's what you have to do sometimes. And it's been quite good over the more recent years that I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because the Simward one was a perfect case. It's like you've got a room full of developers. They all want to do JavaScript or some variation thereof, because that's the most common sort of platform that we're using. But there wasn't a Node API for it. Yeah. So it's like, right, well, I want this for my hack. I'll build it. I'll ship it out. I'll write the URL on the little whiteboards that we had down in the center in London. I'll say, look, I'm going to submit this anyway, but it's actually more useful as an enabling technology for everyone else. So if you go ahead and use it, fine. I'll get some bug reports back. I'll get some fixes that will improve it for me. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's something I can show to Simward. Simward, you've missed a bit.
Yes.
The bit is a nice little Node API, and I know that this is useful because look, these other 5 hacks are all using the same code.
Exactly. Because it's like collaboration in a lot of the hacks. Especially when it's in person, people collaborate. Because there's so many different skill levels, and people who are like old hands at it can help some of the younger guys who maybe have a great idea but are struggling on some of the basics. You know how it is. So it's collaboration is really nice. And the other thing within TADHack that you're famous for is 3 hacks in one event, and that for me, I think you'd realize you'd stretched yourself perhaps a little. When you do
maybe, it's always the extravagance of it. It's one of these things. I mean, some of it, I never set out to do world record of let's do 3 hacks this year, or let me see how much I can show off and impress the judges by looking how much I've done.
Yeah.
Most of it comes just through happenstance.
Yeah.
The 2019 Simward one is a perfect example. There was a thing I wanted to do.
Yep.
I needed an API that was not Perl requests because I didn't want to write it in Bash script.
Yep.
So I wrote the Node API. I thought, it's going to have a use. I might as well submit it. But what I actually want to do is this other thing.
Exactly.
And then by the time I've done that sort of hack and submitted that, I've had other ideas, or if I've been working with someone, we've had other ideas like, well, that's better than what I was going to do.
Yep.
We'll build that. And when you're collaborating, you're not always working neck and neck the whole time. Sometimes it's like, well, I can't do anything until you fix this, or I need a front end before I can implement that.
Yeah.
So while they're going away, instead of just sitting around going down the pub, what I'll actually do, don't laugh at that. I'll tell you when I'm doing the funnies. I work hard for my TADHack. I don't go down the pub just because I can. Seriously, you can't get the stuff these days. So what I'll do is I say, well, there's nothing reasonable I can do until they've finished their bit. I'll go away and I'll play with something else.
Yep.
Not necessarily intending it to be a hack. And I think that year was the one I did the SMS Choose Your Own Adventure game.
Oh, yes.
Because it's like, well, I've got a system now. I've written this Node stuff, which we're using for this other thing.
Yep.
I've now got a way of sending a message and receiving a message. Well, surely it's only 5 lines of code to put a thing in the middle that says take an input, parse the input, and then process an output.
Yep.
I just thought, well, let's do a Choose Your Own Adventure game.
Yep. I remember.
So I wrote some things in. I wrote 5 lines of code, pumped it in. It took half an hour to write. And I thought, I might as well submit it. Worst case, it just, people go, well, whatever. It doesn't matter.
That's neat. Yep.
It gives another example of what the platform can do.
Exactly.
And the whole thing about helping the sponsors at TADHack is like, well, even if it's only a half-baked idea, if people search for how can I send a message, receive a message, and do a sort of a virtual online game book type of thing with text message?
Yep.
There's an example.
Exactly.
There's my GitHub repo. That shows you how to do it with that API.
Exactly.
Even if no one watches it, it's like it's there when that someone does.
Oh yeah, it is, and we see it, in the TADHack YouTube channel. We'll see stuff that's like, well, 10 years old, and there'll only be a few views, but you can see people are watching it to understand something. So it is. I think just getting the content out there. It may not be massive numbers, but it doesn't matter. We're still helping people.
I think I read this article since Alan became the YouTube star here with the podcast. They're talking about the growth of YouTube is just going to blow past everything, and half of it's going to be on educational related stuff. So you may want to get back in the game and start, teaching a little bit, because that seems to be where the explosion is going to be. So an intersection from about what you did with the tutoring and then what you're doing with the hacking. That's where they're saying, there'll be an explosion. They say that basically in the next few years, half of all YouTubes will be educational. So that's their push. YouTube's push is in that direction. Just some feedback.
I can believe it, because I use it for, it's like a few years back, the fridge, when a fridge stopped working, and it was like, where did I go? Well, I went online, and then it was to YouTube. And it shows you, here's where the compressor is. Here's how you access the compressor. Here's how you test this. Here's how you test that. And there's just all this content out there that helps you solve problems. So I agree. I think there's, a ton of stuff that can be done there. And of course, Steve, you can mash it up with some AI music and, some of your magic.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the magic one is why the education thing is not a surprise.
Yeah.
There were lots of ways I learned magic, and one of them is from books.
Yep.
And there's a shelf of books there, which are very good books, and you read them and you understand. And when they're talking about doing sleight of hand, they'll say you hold the playing cards here, and you put this finger here and this one here. And it's like, that's fine, but drawing hands is difficult anyway.
Yeah.
And then you see it done on video.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they're doing this and said, this is what you see, this is what your audience sees. And it's like, why did no one do this before? And they did do this before.
Yes.
But obviously it took a while before magicians said, oh, I don't want to put my stuff on video because it's to this, to that, or to the other.
Yeah.
They were somewhat resistant, like, oh, if you've put me on video, then the essence of my soul has been destroyed. If it's some kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, back in the 80s, we had magic videos. And then we had magic DVDs, and now we've got magic streaming.
That's right.
And a lot of the time it was just, we'll record the person doing the tricks, and then the person will sort of move their hand to show you the things as they want.
Yep,
that's
absolutely.
That's entry level.
Yes.
Then they said, well, how can we actually use this technology as an improvement, not just a translation of what we had before? And what they realized is that DVDs have a scene feature where you can view the same scene from multiple camera angles.
Yes. Yes.
So some of the magicians were going, well, let's use this. Let's film me performing here. There's a camera there from the audience. There's a camera here over my shoulder seeing what the magician sees. And there's a camera over there so you can look at the other angles.
So they have the profile.
And that was an improvement.
Yeah.
And with YouTube, that's another step on. You've got the translation in real time in multiple languages.
Yes. Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the same way as with DVDs, you can just switch to a different language subtitle.
Yeah.
Here you've got that already built into the technology.
Yep.
And before long, they'll wire up the closed caption stuff with speech synthesis.
Yeah.
So that you can actually hear the person speaking in your native language.
Yeah.
And probably the AI will manipulate the video so the mouth moves correctly and doesn't look uncanny valley.
No,
I'm not surprised this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for it to happen.
Yep, exactly. And I think, one of the things, because I've always valued your feedback to the sponsors over the years, and naming no sponsors, keeping it nice and generic, what are some of the common, misapprehensions sponsors have on how you make it easy for developers to use your resources?
Yeah, I will try and follow suit and not mention any specific sponsors because we have diplomacy. But
We
I
try.
think, yeah, we try. Well, as one gets older, one gets better at it because you learn you really shouldn't say that, and you get worse as you think, I don't care anymore. My career's over. I can say what. But it's that balancing act and those little angels and demons on each shoulder. So no names, no pack drill, no pack drill. One of the big things that I always see is this disconnect between what the telecoms companies are providing and what they think the developers are needing. Because they are the telecoms people and their entire world is telecoms. And that's great and that's brilliant and there's no qualms about that. But as a developer, I'm only going to use a very small part of your product and I really don't care about the rest of it. If I can send that text message, if I can get that response to a message, if I can make that call via the browser or through a SIP thing or whatever, I don't care about that infrastructure.
Yeah,
I just care about that one API call that makes that thing happen.
Exactly.
And a lot of the time, you'll get this disconnect where they say, well, why are you not using all the rest of this thing? It's like, well, I don't need it. Why have you spent all this time building out this other 90%? I'm only going to use 10% of your work.
Yeah.
Or they'll do things like their documentation, for example, which is something I do badger on, partly because I've been a writer, and they do this thing about and we'll write the documentation for other people in the industry. Well, funnily enough, it's not your industry. Programmable telecoms. The programmable bit is the bit we care about. Stop writing it for telecoms people. Write it for programmer people.
Exactly.
People like me who. Through doing TADHack, yes, I know about terms like trunk and SSID and all these other little bits because that's one of the skills I picked up over the years. But that's just me.
Yeah.
You get another developer who wants to come in and do some hacking on your platform. They just want this one feature. And if they see a bunch of jargon, which is not in their industry but in yours, they're just going to go, what do I do? What's trunk? And you spend more time looking up terms. And it's the disconnect of what they think everyone else is doing and understanding and what you really understand. Going back to the bits we're talking about, when in the good old days when I could write a Node API and win a TADHack from it, I'm glad most of that's gone away. It used to be that if you want to use their API, you had to use whatever language they liked best. If a telecom company happened to have Go programmers, the API would be in Go. If they happened to have PHP programmers, it'd be written in PHP. And there's nothing wrong with PHP, and there's nothing wrong with Go. But you're going to find if your entire audience is JavaScript, maybe even Perl in the good old days, or whatever, you're not going to be able to hit the right target.
Exactly.
So you've got to provide it. Use tools like Swagger and things like that, and move your business to where those developers are, which is in that webby world, where you are using things like Postman to test your API calls. You are using a web-based interface for most of your work. You're not necessarily being on the command line.
Yes.
If you've got a curl request, that's fine. But if you see that, it's like, do I go to curl.com? There are people out there who just don't know this stuff.
Exactly.
Because it's not taught.
Yes.
So you've got to go, move your telecoms thinking into the programmer space and say, well, the programmers here, what are they doing?
Exactly.
The disconnect, you're using JavaScript. Oh, me too. I'm using Rust. Okay, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Think about the naming. The naming is such an important
critical.
part.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I have to give, Twilio its due. It really managed out of many of the companies out there, and it's not perfect, but it really managed that transition between all these telecom capabilities and what a developer may want to do. I mean, if you search, send an SMS from an app, it's Twilio stuff that's there with the code, so you can go cut and paste, and even with the procedure and how to set up the API keys, all the little hurdles that people ignore, but it's where especially a lot of young programmers fail at, because they haven't done enough failing yet to realize, this wasted a whole day of my time. This is what we need to do.
Oh yeah, I mean the copy and paste mentality, even though we might joke about it sometime, is not actually that far from reality.
Yes.
If a telecom solution is just a tiny part of our product, if we can find a piece of code that we can copy and paste, maybe add an API key or an API token, whatever it is, then we're going to choose that over anything else.
Exactly.
We want to just be able to say, no, let's take that and just plug it straight in. We don't necessarily want or have the time or inclination to learn all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because from our point of view, we generally don't get past that first part of onboarding.
Yes.
If I was building an entire ecosystem based around telecoms, I'm going to build a lot of code. So it's worth my time getting into all the nooks and crannies of that code.
Yeah.
But the harsh reality is, for one feature, I'm only going to go this far. So you only need to keep me interested as a developer for the onboarding stage, which means if your onboarding stage needs a credit card, if your onboarding stage needs my postal address, if the onboarding stage requires me to set up this environment, build this Docker container, install, run this onto a publicly addressable IP, if I go to your website and I have to click, no, I do not want to subscribe to your newsletter. No, I do not want this. No, yes, I will accept cookies. Then you're just putting up so many barriers.
Correct.
And as a web developer, I have to do this every single day for every single half-baked product I ever want to try.
Yeah.
Every library module API has exactly the same thing. Subscribe to newsletters, cookies, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas a telecoms company probably does this once in their life. They need one thing from one website. The rest of their work is telecoms based.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's their business.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I sometimes think they always miss the fact that we're not all in that world. We have a completely different viewpoint on the ecosystem.
Very self-focused. I wholeheartedly agree. But I always say you can never make it simple enough. Full stop. Even when you think you've made it perfect, you can still make it, because it just broadens and broadens and broadens the audience. I mean, that's why with low code, no code, you're making it so that non-developers, product managers, even marketing people can get in and play and go, shit, this works. We can do the notifications for this workflow. It's just dumb. It's so critical. But again, I just like to go for it, Stephen.
I was going to say, over the last few years, we've got to the point now, luckily, where you can view the documentation for an API call, and on the right-hand side, you put in your API key, you click a button, and it does it there in the browser. You don't even need to alt-tab away from what you're trying to read. You look at it, you see the result. The documentation says, you need to put this into here. Yes. You get this out from here. Yes. It's all focused. It's in that same frame. And that is so much better.
Yeah, single pane of glass, absolutely. But again, Stephen, thank you so much for being part of TADHack over all these years. Always love your hacks and your contributions that are worth so much to everybody that's involved in TADHack. Johnny, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah. I have one question, Stephen. On AI, so I've been just diving into conversational AI and some of the things, and generative AI and what they're doing. I mean, the whole talk about 30% of the world's jobs being lost to AI, hotels and businesses using it. I would think that's a bonanza for developers, being able to create things with AI. Is that something that makes sense to you? What I'm thinking, being an outsider.
Yes, it might do.
Business guy.
Yeah, at the moment, I have no idea where AI is actually going to go. I like the idea that it will support developers who otherwise wouldn't get that support. And I'm thinking, at the moment, to be fair, I have recently been thinking it is helpful for the junior developers. They want an AI to say, oh, I've written this thing. I think it will build a hotel booking system. I hope it will build this platform that lets me, launch a WebRTC session and communicate elsewhere. But I'm not sure, have I got all the corner cases right? And AI can come in and goes, well, normally when people do this, they have to catch these exceptions, or they have to do this thing over here to make it all work.
Yeah.
Normally that's a lead developer with experience that has to do that. Because only when you are that experienced do you have the foresight to say, well, this cannot scale for these reasons. They've fallen into those potholes themselves. Mm-hmm. AI knows what those potholes are because it's been trained on that data. So part of me is thinking, oh, it's all for the juniors to help them level up on their own without taking time from the seniors. But there's also times I'm thinking, actually, isn't it really just for the seniors? Because the juniors should actually be learning this stuff from first principles, not being taught it. For the seniors, it says, well, how can we go beyond what we already know and find ideas from other fields? Going back to what Alan mentioned about being a polymath, the whole idea on the polymath is you're not just doing lots of different things in computing. You're doing computing things, and you're doing maybe chemistry things, and maybe you're doing fine art, and then maybe you're doing ecology. And if you're doing multiple subjects, you suddenly see there's connections in the real world between all of these things that humans generally don't get because they study their thing, and maybe they've got one or two interests outside of work. They play in a pub band or whatever it is. But AI doesn't have that restriction of time. If people go out and they play, music in the evening, they probably also don't have the time to go out in the evening and do something else, an art class, for example. It takes a lot of discipline to not watch the telly every night. So when, as we're saying, I'm a magician, a musician, a composer, I have to be very disciplined at doing those things and not letting myself letting time run away with me.
Yeah.
AI doesn't have that. So the AI can study all these subjects and suddenly go, hey, did you realize there's actually a connection between this thing in that field and that thing in this completely different field that you'd never ever spot? You should probably have a look at this. And it's fantastic for seniors who are looking for metaphors to explain things.
Yes, that's a good point. I had not considered that. Excellent, Steve. Well, we're coming up on time. This was fun, as I knew it would be. Again, thank you for all your support over the years and continuing. I wish you the best of luck with all your sales on your book, 20 Go to 10.
My book.
Available from Amazon and all good retailers.
Yes.